Hi and welcome to the very first painting. I'm so excited and nervous to just start diving in and explaining to you my process. But first of all, I want to refer you back to this lesson, the drawings, where I show you how to get the drawings on your canvas. And then also the supply lesson with all the supplies and the paint colors that I explained there. And if you haven't watched that, maybe that's the best place to start with those two videos. Right, so on to painting number 1, where I have done my drawing already and it's dry, and then I'm going to start adding the background. So a couple things that I just want to mention is that I will be repeating myself a lot because I follow the same method in all 6 paintings. So I will probably just forgive me, and sometimes you're ready to hear it the first time, and sometimes you only hear it when you start painting. So I really want to encourage you to start painting as quickly as possible, so that then everything I say will definitely make a little bit more sense to you. Okay, so having said that, the first thing I'm doing after I did my drawing is just to paint the background with blue, and this is I'm using a combination of washes and of a little bit more solid paint mixed with water, and even the solid parts that I painted on the left side, you can see there, has a transparency quality about them. So that's the one thing that I love, is to paint in layers, and that's why I love washes. So wash, how do you know your palette is watery enough for a wash? And the simple answer is just that when you lift your paintbrush up, the water should literally drip off of it. I don't know if you can see this, but my canvas and all the paintings, my canvas is just lifted off the surface at the top. I'm resting it on just a jar of I think molding paste or something. So that gives me that little bit of an angle so that the paint can flow. And I love the paint drippings, and I think it's almost, just a part of who I am and how I paint. And I've always done that. So I love that wash look. Okay, so there you can see the jar of molding paste at the top of the screen where I just rest my canvas on, just to give me a little bit of an angle. I also work globally, right? So what I mean by that is I will take this red, and it's a Naphthol Crimson acrylic paint, and I would just paint a basic layer of paint on the flower, and then I would go and paint other pieces too. And I have no rhyme or reason for this. I just like to add color, and to be honest with you, this stage of the painting where I start adding in the flowers, the basic first layer of the flowers, is usually the most frustrating for me, because I have to figure out where do I want the pinks, where do I want the reds, where do I want the blues, and all the colors, and also getting enough variety of color is also a frustrating part for me. That pink, so how I would make the pink, and this is just from memory, so when we actually watch the video where I mix this palette, it might be slightly different. But I would take titanium white, which is a phenomenal opaque white. It's very, very opaque, meaning dense, so it's not transparent at all. And I would just take a little pale red, or even the Naphthol Crimson inks of the acrylic inks, and I would just add a drop, and that will make that lovely light pink. I like to create variety of colors, so I might even mix in a little bit of the red more with the pink. And you can see that on the palette itself, just that little bit darker pink. Or I might add a little bit of white, and that makes it just a little lighter, so that you just get that variety of shades and hue on your canvas. But this is almost like coloring, and maybe that's why I don't like it very much. It doesn't feel like painting, and it's a little bit of work just to get the flowers assigned a color, so to speak. And then once this is dry, I will go back and add detail. And I love when I get to after I've painted the greens on, then I start loving the painting, and then it becomes a painting to me, where I start adding details and just loving the embroidery process of painting. Okay, so I love heavy body acrylic paints because I love the opacity of the paint, but I also love how I can use big chunks of paint and really create an impasto effect very easily. So I don't have to use so much paint, you know. The fact that I use the acrylic inks also really stretches my paints a lot. So that is why I love the heavy body paints. It goes further, you know. I can paint a lot of paintings with you know, the few paint jars that I have. So I'm adding a little bit of a darker pink into that rose, just here and there, and I'm careful not to do too much, because I know that I will go back. An acrylic paint, if you want to blend the paint, it's great when it's wet, but for how I want the flowers to look, it's better if they can be dry before I add more paint, you know. So, okay, another thing that I just want to mention, and I'll probably mention this a couple times, is that I have an enormous amount of paintbrushes. You saw in the supply video my flower pot with paintbrushes, and I love the little paintbrushes. And well, never say never, right? Because sometimes I do, but honestly, just to keep your colors fresh, use clean paintbrushes all the time, you know. So grab a new one and paint the white, or grab a new one and paint the pink. So I would just wait until they're all. And you can see I altered the flower there a little bit, the protea, you know. And that is also a protea that I'm going to be painting. But I'm starting off with white because I want to move towards a lavender color and purple, you know. But I just want to clean it up a little bit, you know. So that is basically what I'm doing. And also you can see how I'm just adding little bits of detail already. And that's just to satisfy my soul a little, because this is really the hardest part of the painting, is just to assign the colors to all the flowers. So cleaning your paintbrushes is important. Using clean paintbrushes for every color is important. And then also making sure that your colors don't get dirty, and that brings us back to the paintbrushes. So that's it for this painting, for this palette. And now I'm probably going to mix a new palette, or I have a new palette and I want to add more colors to the next phase of the painting. Okay, so here you can see I've added some purple and mix that with a little bit of white. It's basically the same color, but I would just mix in a little bit more color on top of it, again just to get that variety of color. So this is one of my favorite colors. It's deep violet. I love deep violet. And on the acrylic ink side, there's also a violet called deep violet, and I love that one. And also the quinacridone magenta on the ink side is phenomenal. So that's also a lovely color, the quinacridone magenta, to mix with white and to get a lovely shade of purple and light pink, you know. So that's just one idea. So again, just expanding your palette with different colors and adding little details here and there. And it's a slow going process. And again, that's maybe why I like to work on 3 or 4 paintings at once. It's because I do want to, number one, when I paint, I don't do anything else. I don't cook, I don't clean, I don't do laundry. I only brush my teeth and drink coffee. Okay, and eat pizza. It's probably what I do. But so I get so focused and into it. It's almost like an obsession for me. I'm just being honest. And then I get this impatience in my bones, and I love to just quiet that by working on more than one painting at once. So okay, again, just furthering expanding, and I love pinks, right? I love flowers, so I love the pinks and the reds, and sometimes it's just good to have the contrast of colors as well. So I didn't show it on this little video, but you can see there on the flowers and at the top, I'm adding a little bit of the yellows already. So this is where I'm starting to add in the leaves, and this is one of my favorite parts. So this color is green gold, and it's a very transparent color, and I love it because it's so versatile. So when I paint it on that little paint palette, it might not be my favorite color, but for some reason it just works beautifully on paintings. And what I did there is I added in a little bit of the lime green acrylic inks, and that just gives it a different shade, you know. So I love mixing the inks with the paints. Is a very easy way to get a different shade, and it's also and now I'm just adding in a little bit of brilliant yellow green. It's a light green, and I'm just going to paint a little bit more in pastel on the leaves. So I love that green, that green gold color, and the magic happens when, you know, like when I'm painting inside of that green gold color with this beautiful lime green, or just leaving it. Okay, I love that lime green too. I love that some of the colors are more transparent and more opaque, and the more in pastel you paint, of course it becomes more opaque, right? So, and this is the part where it's a little hard to explain, but I do like to work all over my canvas. So, and that maybe that's just intuitively to balance out the, you know, to make it a balanced painting by adding the same color a few places on the painting. So, and that's how my paintings developed. So I squeezed out a little bit of alizarin crimson, and that is that beautiful naphtha crimson red. And now I just want to add a little bit of the dark contrast, and I'm doing it with alizarin crimson, a small paintbrush, and fine lines, right? So I'm just going to enhance the the rose by adding a couple of lines, and you can see how I'm adding that red next to the crimson, but also with a very light touch. And it's very hard to decide when to stop. But yeah, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm not really even holding my paintbrush very tightly. It's a very, very fine line. And when you do your drawings on your paintings, that will help you with just the drawing part, because believe it or not, you don't want all your lines to be even. You can even see when I did my drawings how some lines are thin, some lines are thick, so. And then also just adding that beautiful red, that naphtha red, and I'm just using the acrylic basics. That's the paint quality I'm using. Over the little buds at the top, and it just gives it that little bit of a shininess, and I love that. Then again, I'm just putting some dimension into the protea with a little darker red. So when I studied art back in the 90s, like alizarin crimson was by far my favorite color red, and frankly Prussian blue was my favorite color blue, and it's still two of my favorite colors to use. I had a professor that used to say that you've never done a painting until you've added red to it, and I kind of agree with him. So just watering down my paint a little bit, just adding a little bit of a red wash here and there, and cleaning my brush. So again, very intuitive feeling, and you'll develop your own, I almost want to say, style of painting, but feel free to start just copying exactly what I'm doing here. So that's the thing with art is, and I've seen it in every art form that I've ever participated in, scrapbooking, art journaling, painting, it starts by copying. And once you've copied enough and you get, just comfortable with whatever medium you're working with, then what happens is you start going in your own direction. And before you know it, you'll have your own style and your own voice. And that's what I love about painting and the creative process. So don't ever feel guilty by copying what I'm doing, and before you know it, you'll have your own style if you just persist in it, because to develop a creative life, it just takes time. So now I'm just adding a little bit of white, and I've added a couple drops of that yellow ink into that white. So it's not pure white, it has a slight yellow hue to it, a shade to it. So, and I'm just adding that as detail with a round brush, just dabbing that flower with a little bit of white. So the painting is coming together and I'm loving it. And one thing that I actually love the most about this specific painting, which is one of my favorites, is that green gold on the leaves. So it's just so nice to see how that transparency with the little bit of texture, I just love it. So again, just adding a few details over the purple, thinking where else can I add a little bit of this fresh off-white paint color. And I do actually have inspiration, and there's a link, I think, in the supplies to a Pinterest board, with flower arrangements and just images of flowers. And I always have, like, you can't see it here, but on my desktop I will have like a big image open with flowers, and where I can get inspiration from. And I don't use only one photo per painting. I would go through 6 or 7 images, because I don't want to like copy one specific image, and I think it's just copyright issues. So what I will do is I will look at a dahlia, for instance, what I'm painting there, and I'll look at images of dahlias, and then I will try and paint it as best as I can see it. So the one thing that I've been doing the last year is really studying flowers a little bit more, to make sure that I can paint them as best as I can see with my eyes. And I know it sounds weird, but drawing is seeing. So, and it's seeing to translate it into your hands and to translate it into canvas. So, but I am an impatient person when it comes to art, and that's why I can't stand the idea thinking that I have to work a month on a painting, So I don't think I'll ever have the patience to do photorealism, something like that. But that's why this style of painting just suits me particularly well. Mixing in a little bit of a lighter pink, and I'm just going over the bells, the beautiful little flowers, and adding details here and there. And this is what I add the details now because it has to make the journey a little bit more satisfying for me. Blending in, because the light paint there is a little wet still, so I'm just blending it in. So yeah, I'm learning to paint flowers better, and I know it's just a process. So again, if I had to wait before I can paint the perfect flower before I taught this class, it will probably be another 6 years or so. So, don't get discouraged. It just takes time, and this is the place where I'm at now in my paintings, or where you're at in your paintings, and that is what it is, It's almost like any art form, any creative life, you will look back and things that you did, a couple of years ago, and you're like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? But that's just part of your journey. So just adding a little bit of yellow. I love pops of yellow on my paintings, and honestly, it just freshens things up so much for me. So I love that. I also refer back to different images, like I've mentioned before. So when I paint a protea, I will look at the protea image. That is that beautiful yellow-orange azo, or azo, A-Z-O, ink. And I love just adding that to a little bit of white. And the white just gives the opacity and the texture, but the ink gives the beautiful color. So one thing why I love to do the paintings, just adding a little stripe of yellow to that rose, and you can see how it just brightens it up, hey? So why I like to do my painting drawings with acrylic inks is because then when I paint over it with water, it doesn't smudge. I've done it with other types of inks, and then when I paint over it, it just smudged black. And then you literally just want to run around shouting and screaming. So this painting is dry up to this point. And now we're just going to paint a little bit more with green and add some, we're just going to add greens and yellows. Oh, no, we're going to start a new palette. So I've actually did the paintings a while ago. Oh, a little bit of gold gold paint. Actually, the gold paint is something that I haven't listed on my supply list. But you can use the inks, or you can just buy a tube of heavy body acrylic gold. And I like the brilliant gold. And what I'm going to do now is just add a little bit of paint to the dahlia. And it's more, yeah, it's a little bit impasto, but it's very transparent. So it's almost like a wash. And I love the transparent acrylic paints because you can still see what's happening underneath it. But I'm just adding it in the middle. And honestly, when you look at this painting, once it's dry, from an angle, you can see the shininess of the gold. So it's kind of nice. But I'm not adding it all over my painting, just on that flower, I think. Right, so now I'm adding chromium oxide green and hooker's green to my palette. The first one is the chromium oxide green. I love hooker's green. So the complete name for this color is hooker's green deep hue permanent. It's one of my absolute favorite colors. And I love it because it's so dark and black. And I don't know, it's just the most beautiful color to add contrast. And if you wash it down, it's it can make a lovely wash, almost in the place of the Prussian blue. It's just a phenomenal, beautiful, rich green. And then also this oxide green is, I just love different shades of green. And again, I want to get as much color contrast on my page or my painting, my canvas, as possible. You can already see just that little bit of green, the dark green, how it makes a difference. And I'm just adding it here and there. And so the one thing about the dark green is later on, it's one of those beautiful opportunities to add texture on top of it by embroidering a little bit of, detail. So that's why the solid green, dark green spots doesn't bother me too much. And then just a little fine brush and just adding in extra details here and there. And so again, this is when the painting really becomes like you get addicted to this part of it, when you can start editing those details and adding in little, just defining, because that's what I'm doing. I'm just defining that flower. Here you can see. Okay, so what sometimes happens is my memory cards can only record 20 minutes. And then what happens is they just stop, and I don't always know. So to combat that, I've started to keep a timer on. Okay, this color is probably, again, that beautiful brilliant yellow green, and I've mixed in a few drops of the yellow from the inks, just adding a couple of ink spots in yellow, and I'm just painting again over what I've done already, and this just brightens up the painting, right? Right, so every painting lesson will have 2 videos, just easier to break it up into 2 parts for uploading purposes. And this one, we're coming to the end of the first section, so now it's a good time to take a break, go make coffee or tea or wine, and come back for the second half.